2025, I'd like to call the meeting of the McMinnville Water and Light Commission to order. Trina McManus, will you please do a roll call?
Yes, Mayor Morris,
Here.
Commissioner Tankersley,
Here.
Commissioner Elmer,
Here.
Commissioner Garvin,
Here.
Commissioner Macy Baker.
Here.
Thank you. We have 6 items listed on the consent agenda for tonight. Would any commissioner like to remove anything from the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
I'm going to say Tankersley and a second from Elmer. All those, any further discussion? Nope. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Included in the packet are accounts payable and purchasing reports. Are there any questions on these reports? No.
Thank you.
Adam, you good?
Mhm.
Okay. We're gonna move on. We have no new employee introductions tonight. We are cruising.
For a while.
Yeah, until we get Jeff up here and you're gonna slow, right? Next, we have consultant and partner reports. So we'd like to ask City Manager Jeff Towery to come up to the table and provide an update on the City of McMinnville.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the commission.
Yes.
There we go. So nice to be with you again. I'll start off with a few slides. Opportunity for questions afterwards. We had our new council convene to do some team building and goal setting early in the year, including some speed dating with department directors and other members of the executive team. We'll be picking up the process again this summer after we get through budget this year. So stay tuned for that. We had over 80 people last month at an open house for the Innovation Campus, a community forum. We just closed a community survey on the project, and we're also planning an Arbor Day event. There'll be a tree planting at City Park and some special recognition for Rob Stevenson for his years of service to the community, particularly through the Landscape Review Committee and other volunteer efforts. We welcome Katie Henry. She's our new finance director. She comes to us with a variety of public, private, and nonprofit sector accounting work. She is terrific. She describes herself as very black and white. That also means she can be very blunt on occasion. So she's terrific. We've really enjoyed working with Katie, and she's hit the ground running and already added some value in just a couple of months that she's been with us. I want to talk a little bit about some work we're doing in the planning program. We're working on a state mandated housing production strategy. Our forecast is nearly 60% of our future housing demand will be for households earning 120% or less of area median income, and most of our new housing are 140% or more. So you can see there's a gap between need and affordability. We'll be continuing that work and bring a draft forward in the spring, and it's ultimately due to the state by December 31st. So that's an ongoing project that we'll be reporting on in the future. We've also seen a nice burst of affordable housing work. The Baker Street lofts have been constructed. Habitat, Aspire are working on 34 dwelling units. About 26 of those are built already. Community Home Builders is working on the Whispering Meadows subdivision. They've got 26 dwelling units constructed, and those are focused on home ownership. Stratus Village, the housing authority's partnership with the city, the tribe, and the county, has 175 units under construction. I'll have a picture later. And then we've also got another 96 unit subdivision planned for Southeast Stratus Avenue and Handley Oaks, which will be next door to the Baker Street loft. Got a couple of pictures of Stratus Village under construction, and the proposal at Handley Oaks, and you can see the Baker Lofts in the background there. So looking forward to having those projects online over the next several months. We also welcomed a new police chief. Corey Wood started on January 6th, following the retirement of, it says Matt Skills. I don't remember that name, so I guess that's what the old guy's name was. Some Parks and Rec updates. We had about 100 years of public service walk out the door last week with Rob Porter, Jason Hafner, and Sheila Carl all retiring at the same time. It's a lot to lose, but there's some symmetry. They've been such a great team for so long. It was also sort of sweet to have them go out together. And there was a terrific turnout at the retirement event. I know the mayor was able to get there, and a number of other staff and counselors, and we had some great time with them. We've hired a replacement for Rob Porter. Joshua Russer will actually looks like he started yesterday. I haven't gotten a chance to meet Joshua yet, but he comes with a lot of great aquatics experience. And then we also had a grant to the senior center so we can purchase a 15-passenger bus that's also wheelchair accessible. So we'll be able to offer one-day excursions again, as we haven't been able to do for quite a while. Looking forward to providing that expanded sort of reestablished service to the seniors at the center. Some library updates. We've had new shelving. That was a Library Foundation project. We're continuing to do great things with our Library of Things. We got a terrific grant from Yamhill Community Cares organization that's helped us expand the collection. My current story about the Library of Things is that our city attorney, David Leitenberg, was over at the library one day a few months ago, and he struck up a conversation with a woman there. Turns out she's a retired attorney and is interested in volunteering for the city doing legal work. And so I've joked that he can even find a volunteer attorney at the Library of Things. And she's been a terrific addition to the team. We're also doing a lot of financial literacy at the library. ARP tax assistance and that sort of thing. Part of the grant from YCCO actually has paid for this billboard, which you can see at the south end of town, that reminds people that they can get all manner of things. You might recognize a couple of folks with library and city connections in that picture there. Happy to answer questions. I promised I wasn't going to read and I moved fast. So if I went too fast on any of that stuff, feel free to go back. And if you've got questions about other stuff, I can defer those to former Council President Garvin.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah. Jeff, I have a quick question on the housing.
Sure.
Did I understand correctly that we're just looking at new housing for the need, or do they look at people who sell their existing houses and then move up? And
so we have to do a housing production strategy that addresses the current stock, the future needs in the stock, where the housing can go, the types of housing they need to be. That little tidbit was just a forecast for where the income needs are and the type of things that are currently being built. And so there's a gap between what's being built now and the income needs in the future.
right, but do they look at what we will have from existing, when people sell their houses to buy the 160% or whatever it is house of the.
Oh, so transition. So
Yeah.
people moving out of smaller starter homes
Right.
into, I'll have to ask her that question. It's a great question. I'm not actually sure if it goes to that level or if it's really about the housing production, not just what kind
Sort of
gets turned over.
assuming that it has to be a new house to meet the demand.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll check in on that.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have a question for Mr. Towery?
I got a question, sort of around the housing as well. On the UGB, when was it expanded last? I know you guys have been working on that.
So
Is it recent, or is it something we're still working on?
No, we expanded the UGB 3.5 years ago, I think. Does that sound about right, Adam?
Yeah.
Maybe 4. And so we brought in around 900 acres, mostly on the west and southwest side of town, but sort of ringing down to the south as well. We are also required to do area planning for each of, for all that property before it can be developed. And so we finished the Fox Ridge Road area plan, working with a particular owner and developer who wants to bring forward a subdivision proposal for that. And then we've just started the process to do the southwest area, and we've actually bundled a couple of those chunks together, and we're launching that planning effort later this year. And we expect that'll probably take about 2 years to work through the area planning and the infrastructure assessment. So for the southwest area, it'll probably be between 3 and 5 years before we actually see housing built, and could potentially see housing built within a year or two on that Fox Ridge Road parcel. And then we'll continue to plan the other areas, but those two first big area plans will be the bulk of that UGB property.
And that expansion was the 2003 plan that got worked and then sat on the shelf for 10 years. And then we
Okay.
pushed it
So-
through right before the 20-year deadline.
Okay. So once those bigger areas come available, we should hit more of a supply, which could bring some pricing down.
That's the goal, right? The
Is there any-
economics of the land is that a more available supply will help particularly drive the land costs down.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the big nut to crack right now is the cost of land in addition to the cost of construction.
And so I know the Fox Ridge, my guess will be staying that 140 above area.
There's
just
gonna
because-
be a mix. They'll
Okay.
actually have some affordable housing as part of that development. It'll be a mixed variety of housing. So there'll be some affordable housing, some workforce housing, and sort of the traditional market rate, single family homes. Also a little bit of community serving commercial that's really going to be focused specifically on that neighborhood.
Okay.
To that point, does the Fox Ridge or like the whole homes, does that count towards the need in this housing production strategy, or is that?
Yeah, we
last of the-
No, we're actually assessing everything that's in the system and that needs to be in the system. So part of the strategy is to try to determine how much of our housing need can we accommodate with existing land or redevelopment versus the need for an additional UGB expansion. And that's part of what the data will support. Either we'll be able to accommodate all or a lot of that in our current footprint, or we'll need to expand. We don't know the answer to those questions yet.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Want me to read anything else to you? It sounds like.
I
you
think
got-
we're good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
you. Appreciate it.
Next up was supposed to be Brent Keller, our forester, but he is home ill tonight, so we are going to not have him presenting, but if anyone has any questions, we can get the questions to Brent and have them answered later.
All look pretty straightforward.
Yeah, is there at some point from the forestry side of it, like, could we, I mean, at least for me being new, I would love to hear like what their overall plan, what they do, kind of an overview of.
So we have that document from the budget. So there's actually a document that Trina, you know what I'm talking about, that Brent puts together every year.
Yeah, he does an annual report usually in November. I can take a
I can
quick
get you a
peek
copy.
here.
Have a
Yeah,
copy of
if you
it.
look back at the November 2024 packet, that has the annual summary. So it talks about what they've done over the previous year and what they plan to do for 2025. And he comes every year and presents that. So yeah, the November 19th, 2024 packet.
Jenny, are you talking about just this year and last year, or are you talking about the big picture?
Just in
Big-
general.
The big picture,
That's what I
yeah,
thought. So-
kind of big
so,
picture, like, what they're,
Yeah,
what
what
we pay them to, what do they,
maybe we could ask Brent to do that
Yeah.
next month or so.
yeah,
There's
just.
also a breakdown of the Mason, Bruce and Gerard budget in that presentation. So it talks about the different sections that they do, the amount of hours that they spend out there, and then the different categories that they spend the budgeted money on.
And
And don't we have a forest management plan
Plan, yeah.
booklet too? We should Maybe we get that for Denny.
And then also in that, he actually goes through and shows what our timber inventory is.
Okay,
So it actually shows how many.
good. Hey, that'll give me a good start.
Yeah.
I'm sure that'll
It
answer a lot
shows,
of my
and
questions.
I think it's on a 5-year, growth, so.
Okay.
And so, so we still have a lot of second growth, old growth.
Yeah, no, I'm sure
700.
that'll give me plenty to.
Something to look at.
I
in
need
your
to look
spare
at.
But
time.
Yeah.
We can have Brent. And you want to make a note for Brent when next month?
Hopefully he's feeling
Yes.
much better then. All right, and we have no appearance requests for tonight. There are no staff reports this evening. So we move on to new business. The first item under new business is a presentation of the 25-26 budget. Invite Finance Director Mark Dunmeyer to present.
Good evening, Commission.
Hi.
Bring it up here. All right, so this evening, we're gonna be going over our operating budget. Um. Go.
Put the top up one.
There we go. So, we had our review of capital in February. Last month, we talked about personnel. Next month, we'll bring back a draft budget, which will be everything. It'll be in the form of, kind of the full budget document, still in draft format. We'll take information that we gather at that meeting and develop a proposed budget, incorporate changes and develop a proposed budget and bring that back in June. So that's the timeline we're on. So we're kind of in the middle of that. Going over our operating budget. So for this evening, I'll go through some slides and talk about kind of budget overview. Jamie will go over our power supply budget. And then James will go through our operations and maintenance budgets for both the light and the water division. And then we'll talk about our operating results. And then it's just some takeaways from the presentation at the end. So we've shown this slide in the previous two sessions, but just to kind of to underscore that as we go through our budget process, this really does underpin all that we do with reference to how we plan to spend our funds that we collect, and really focused on delivering excellent water and electric service to our customers. So, and as we go through, not so much this evening, but you'll see this in particular next month when we bring back our draft budget kind of in full format. It mirrors what you see each month in the commission packet, our financial statements, which is on the left there. Those are operating expense categories. Those are set by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And that is done so that we can be comparable to other electric utilities. And it's really focused on our output. If it was focused on how we were organizationally structured, everybody's different. So you can't really compare very well. But when you focus on what you produce, how you do that, it becomes much more comparable. So that's our financial model that we use. But because those costs are done by multiple different departments, we also break out our costs by department. And so those departments all have a piece of those costs that we'll talk about tonight and that you'll see in the next couple of months as we bring our budget to you. So
this is kind of interesting to look at our budgets, our operating budgets for both the light and the water division. Light division, it's a significant budget, just over 50 million. Water just under 9. But the thing that really jumps out at you is purchase power and transmission being 68% of that budget. So that really does just change the view of it. It's interesting. So I'll jump to the next slide. I guess maybe I'll just mention here that we're going to talk about each of these expense groupings. Jamie, like I mentioned, is going to go over power supply. We've previously talked about payroll. I'll touch on depreciation here in a minute. Payment of tax, that's 6% of the gross collections of revenue. And then our operations maintenance budgets, James is going to talk about those. So we'll go into more detail on those here coming up. But if you take the purchase power out of the light division, then they visually become much more comparable. Paying benefits then is the largest expense. Granted, light division still nearly, it's just a little over, I guess it's almost double the budget. So, but they are much more comparable looking at it this way. So depreciation, this is a pretty busy slide. I circled the two numbers there at the bottom, both the one for light and for water. Those are our depreciation amounts that are included in next year's operating budget. But that other information is relevant because that's how that number gets calculated. It's based on the rates of depreciation and the amount of assets that we have in all of our different categories. See all the different categories for the light division and the water division. And another thing that's interesting when you look at this, the depreciation amounts are somewhat comparable, 3 million, 2.3 million. So just under $100 million of assets in the light division, about 150 million in the water division. But then you compare that or, kind of put the operating expense budget against that. And you've got a $50 million budget supporting this infrastructure and an $8.8 million budget supporting this infrastructure. So one thing that's very unique about Water and Light is our watershed, and that we just talking about it, our timber program that we have as a part of that. And that's a big deal because that helps offset capital costs. We would have to have higher rates if we didn't have that source of revenue to support capital. And it's kind of small, but here the average over the last 4 years, net timber revenue is about 2.9 million. So that's a significant help to support our capital program. So pretty cool, the structure of our water system and how that is enabled because of our design. Any questions on any of that?
So real
Yeah.
quickly, I like the way you took the power costs out of the chart and then the pie charts is much better. When I looked at it, I was struck by the pilot is the only tax part of it. If you take the pilot out, they're even closer, or is that a bad guess
Yeah,
on
they
my
would be.
part?
They would be closer, I think.
Okay.
Certainly, the payroll would be similar, approaching 50%, like water. Yeah, without that.
Thank you.
So Jamie is going to go next.
Okay.
Good evening. Okay, I'm going to dive into the power supply portion of the budget. As depicted on the earlier chart, you see that power supply costs are a significant portion of our budget. At fiscal year 25-26 totals $34.3 million for power and transmission. That's compared to current fiscal year projection of 31.8 million. Some of the key factors impacting that difference are related to the BPA power and transmission rate increases expected later this year. And also the end of the BPA fiscal year 23 dividend distribution, which was a credit to our power supply costs, and that occurred in the first 3 months of this current fiscal year to the tune of about $700,000 that it reduced our power costs. So that has ended, and we don't anticipate a dividend distribution next year. So here, the power supply budget consists of many line items, but I've tried to roll them up here into some primary categories. At over 28 million, the BPA power costs, let's see right there, make up the majority, as you can see. And line 2 demonstrates the end of that power dividend distribution. So that was a credit of $700,000 this year, won't be in the budget next year. The dividend distribution is a result of BPA's reserves distribution clause triggering when the agency reaches a certain threshold of financial reserves, and surplus sales and favorable market prices have resulted in that RDC triggering in 3 of the last 4 BPA fiscal years. However, this is not something that we can anticipate or budget. BPA will issue their end of year financial results in the fall. And, at that point, we will know, customers will know for certain. But at this point, it's not projected for next year. Line 3 there shows BPA transmission costs. The difference, I'll note here, between the current year's budget and projection is a result of how BPA bills for its transmission base charge, which is the main transmission charge that we receive. The monthly billing determinant for that charge is the hour of the month, the 1 hour in the month in which the BPA transmission system hits its peak demand. So that's not just McMinnville, that's the entire BPA balancing area. And so customers are billed on their demand, their system demand in that hour of that monthly peak. So McMinnville's bill demand can sometimes be significantly lower if, by coincidence, the steel mill is not melting in that hour because of the demand they place on our system when they melt, when they run the arc furnace. So again, it's not something we can predict with any certainty, so we always budget conservatively, assuming that we are at full demand during that system peak. And then you'll see a noticeable increase in the budget this year for transmission. I'll touch on that a little more in a bit here, but that is the initial proposal for BPA transmission rates included there. Line 4 summarizes McMinnville's costs associated with our purchases from Grant County, which have increased slightly. And line 5 here is costs associated with McMinnville's purchase of the generation from the Waste Management Renewable Energy gas plant at Riverbend Landfill. So all together, total power costs projected for 25-26 are 34 million divided by our forecasted load gives us an effective rate of $45.31 a megawatt hour. So I mentioned our load. This is McMinnville's forecasted load for next fiscal year at 758,000 megawatt hours. Each year, in conjunction with BPA, McMinnville submits an updated 10-year load forecast. I work closely with our 2 industrial contract customers to incorporate their load forecasts into McMinnville's total. We're expecting a fairly moderate load growth next year, about 1.4%. This still results in a load forecast that's under our rate period high water mark, which for this BPA rate period is 776,000 megawatt hours. And that is the allocation of the federal system that we are given by BPA at the tier 1 price. Power and transmission costs are budgeted based on forecasted loads and known rates at the time. So there are things that could change as we work through the year. The BP 26 rate case is ongoing. This proceeding will set the BPA power and transmission rates for the next 3 years from October 2025 through September of 2028. In March, customers and BPA settled the power rates. So those settled rates are included in the budget. And more recently, efforts to settle transmission rates have been successful with BPA. However, those specific rate impacts aren't fully known at this point, and they won't be until likely June or July. And so in the budget, I've included BPA's initial proposal on transmission rates, but my preliminary estimates show a reduction in transmission costs of about $100,000 next year. But again, that final record of decision will be issued in July from BPA, and that's when we'll know all the final impacts. So here's a glimpse of McMinnville's power resource portfolio. The majority of our power is purchased from BPA at the tier 1 price. As I mentioned earlier, our forecasted load is less than our allocated tier 1 power or rate period high water mark. So in other words, you might hear a slang term called headroom. We have tier 1 headroom, meaning we're not forecasted to use all of our high water mark. We also take power from 2 hydro resources in Grant County, Washington. To BPA, these are considered existing resources. So they are non-federal resources that reduce our total retail load to, in BPA's calculation, to factor into our net requirement. So BPA looks at our total retail load, subtracts off existing resources, and that is the net requirement on BPA. So these resources, Grant County, it's 2 dams. They actually are what we say at the, top, that they're used first. So, and then BPA provides the remainder. Currently, we do not our load doesn't require us to use the waste management renewable energy amounts. So we do purchase that, but it's not needed to serve load. So it is remarketed by BPA on McMinnville's behalf. This slide gives some further detail on McMinnville's power costs by resource. The first section there at the top is Bonneville. So those costs total almost $33.1 million for there we go. Average rate of $45.15 a megawatt hour. The Grant County resources average to $26.90 per megawatt hour. And waste management renewable energy nets a cost of $20.24 per megawatt hour after remarketing. So that brings us back to the total of $34.3 million, or an average rate of $45.31 per megawatt hour of our projected load. So that's what I have. I'm happy to answer questions. Otherwise, I pass it on to James.
Hearing none.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, Jamie, I want to let everybody else ask questions first. Real quickly, could you explain to the rest of the commission how we got Grant County's power at that great rate?
Well, I wasn't here in the 50s, but those dams were
Neither was I either.
those dams were built in the 50s. And at the time, the power wasn't needed by Grant County. It was offered to the region, and I don't know the particulars, but McMinnville participated in that and has maintained that purchase since. It is our, as you saw, our lowest cost resource. We receive a share of the output. So Grant County commits 30% of the generation of those dams. It's 2 dams, Priest Rapids and Wanapum. They commit 30% as forgive me, I don't remember the term, but they offer it to other parties. So 70% of it is used for their own load, their own needs, 30% is available. McMinnville is what they call an exchange. We take part in an exchange agreement. We get 0.42% of the generation output of those projects. And that amount is fixed, that won't change. Our contract is in effect as long as those projects are licensed by FERC, which currently is through, I believe, 2054 and 2056. And so we pay a fixed energy rate per month on the planned amounts of generation. And then we also are compensated through a BPA rate mechanism for the difference between actual generation and planned amounts. So BPA handles the transmission, and we designate that resource to BPA. They serve our load from the federal system, and then the financial transaction trues up any differences in power costs.
And as I remember, when we participated as sort of an owner, but maybe not, in their relicensing last time. They had to relicense the dam, and I think I remember that our share went down then, and it'll probably go down again in the next relicensing.
Yes, you're correct. I don't know about in the future if that will happen. But it did decrease when they relicensed back in the early, I think it was 2005, 2006.
Something in the initial agreement, because I think we were in on the ground floor.
Yes.
Again, I wasn't there.
Mhm.
But I think the initial agreement was we would get a certain percentage, but then as their needs grow, our percentage goes down a little bit. So in the long term, but I think we are locked in, I think, but I'm not sure until the next relicensing, but. And then the other thing, on the demand charge, that help we get when Cascade Steel isn't operating during that hour, that benefit, does that just go to Cascade Steel?
Yes, yes, if they're not melting and then it directly, that's a pass through per their contract. So their demand is calculated and tracked separate from the demand of Airgas, our other contract customer, and then the demand of the remainder of the system, the distribution customers.
So we would pay our demand charge, whether Cascade's on or not, but I think I understand you to say that the total demand charge that everybody pays and we pay a tiny percentage of is lower if Cascade's not running, right?
For McMinnville as a system,
No,
yes.
but for everybody, because there's less demand, right?
Oh, for the region?
Yeah.
Oh,
So but our share of that
Sure.
is so small, it doesn't matter,
right,
right? Okay.
yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. And the rest of the commission, I mean, this is complicated stuff, and I would encourage you to ask Jamie if you have questions. And there really aren't dumb questions about this stuff.
And I might come ask you, Tom.
We're in trouble then.
Any word for JB?
No, thank
All
you,
right,
Jamie.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
James.
How we doing?
So we're going to talk about operations and maintenance now. So you've had a chance to go through the power transmission section of it. I already talked about labor previously, depreciation, the pilot. So that green wedge there, that's the piece we're going to talk about tonight. I'm going to talk about both the light division and the water division. So I'm going to start off with the light division. Just keep in mind as I kind of talk through this, it's the company as a whole for operating. It's not just engineering and operations, it's the company as a whole. So I talk about training, it's finance, it's water division, it's the light division, it's a whole company involved in this. So on this section, I'm talking about just the light division with some of the costs associated to that. So for the light division, we operate and maintain reliable electrical power for residential, commercial, and industrial customers. McMinnville Water and Light is one of the oldest electrical utilities in Oregon. We have a capital budget of 5.9 million and an operations budget of 50 million. We have engineering and operations staff of 22 full-time staff members. We have supporting staff of 18, that time's split. So that's finance, meter readers, the supporting staff behind the scenes. And then we're talking about the operations and maintenance piece of it, which is on the pie chart there is 6.8%, which is approximately 3.4 million. So we talk about numbers and percentages. This is a draft. It's going to change somewhat. So we'll see some of the percentages change in the final budget and some of the numbers change. This is just a breakout currently. So we're going to go back through and do a review of this later on here, but this is what we have currently. So in that operating maintenance piece, and break it into smaller wedges, we have tree trimming, 2.5%. We have property, workers' comp, cyber insurance, 0.7%. We have dues and assets, 0.6%. We have consulting, 0.6%. Computer hardware and software, 0.5%. And all others, 1.8%. So this next slide is going to talk about those components, key components that go into that wedge there. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but if you have questions on them, I can get into more detail if you'd like. The large one is the tree trimming. That's a 3-year contract for the 25-26 budget. We have 1.2 million for that. We have insurance. That's for property, workers' comp, cybersecurity. That's the 364,000. Consulting services. That's 300,000 approximately. That's for legal, credit card processing, engineering services, support, those kind of things. Going down here, employee programs, training. It's a big one that we put a lot of time into, training our staff, making sure we have the right programs. That investment comes back to us through our employees. Grounds and maintenance, buildings, grounds and maintenance is just that. That's maintaining our facilities. It's tied into janitorial services, as all the vegetation control is tied into that. Safety expenses and PPE. We have our consultant tied in for that for safety. We have that quarterly broken out where they come out and they perform safety training for us. That's also is tied into our PPE. So all of our safety gear is tied into that. Our rain gear, our boots, those kind of things is tied into that as well.
What does PPE stand?
Yeah, so it's protective.
Personal protective
purchasing.
equipment?
That's correct.
Yeah.
It's a great question, Sam. Equipment rental, 50,000, and then customer assistance and outreach, around 33,000. So any questions on these items at all? What goes into those? Okay, I'll move on to these key elements support this next slide here, which is our assets. So we have 7 substations, 12 power transformers, approximately 170 miles of primary distribution overhead. We have 11.2 miles of transmission line, and then we have 160 miles of primary distribution underground. The photo on your left there, that's just outside of Baker Creek substation there. Some of the services and programs we have that support that is tree trimming. We have inspections. We have conduit inspections, pole replacements, emergency repairs. We also have streetlight replacements. We have meter replacements and testing, substation maintenance, education and outreach, And one of my favorite pictures here is that's for safety and PPE. That's out there on Bertano Lane there. It's a nice photo of what kind of what McMinnville looks like out there in that area of town. Back up here. So do you have any questions in regards to the light division and what goes into the operating and maintenance cost for that? Can move on to water then. Okay. So operating and maintaining the water treatment plant, watershed, water distribution system for clean, safe drinking water. That's our main goals there. The water source comes from McGuire and Haskins reservoirs located up in the coastal range outside of McMinnville. We have a capital budget of 5.2 million, operations budget of 8.8 million. We have 15 full-time staff and we have 12 supporting staff. Pie chart looks a little bit different for water, but we do have, 23% is tied to the operations and maintenance piece of it. The dollar amount's lower, but it's a bigger piece of the pie chart there. So we're looking around 2 million for operating and maintenance on that section. Breaking that operation and maintenance piece into smaller wedges, we can look at some of the same. There's a couple new items on here, but some of them are the same as well. We have property, insurance, workers' comp, cyber insurance. We have water supply, water treatment plant maintenance. We have the city water elimination charge. We have consulting services. We have utility expenses. We have computer hardware and software, distribution system maintenance, and others. That makes up that section there.
Can you explain what the city water elimination charge is?
Sure, I'll talk about that in this next slide here.
Okay.
So looking at some of the key elements that go into this section, we at the top of this, like similar to the electrical side, we have property, workers' comp, and cybersecurity at 480,000. We have water supply and water treatment plant maintenance at 285,000. A good chunk of that is the chemicals. That's around 200,000. That city water charge elimination. So currently, we don't charge the city for their water use. We track it. We're required to, but the charge we don't charge them. If we had charged, maybe for $251,000. Consulting services for 195,000. Utility expenses, that's mostly tied to the water treatment plant. Power up there is about $150,000 a year to run the plant up there. Buildings and grounds, same as electrical, that's for maintaining our facilities. Janitorial services tied into that. Safety, PPE, 33,000. That's our consultant cost as well. So the consultant comes out quarterly and does training for both the power and the water side. Water divisions there. And we have rental equipment on there as well.
How do we get away with 2,000 in water and 50,000 and like why is the rental equipment?
The six, well, for the rental equipment.
Because we are currently renting a digger derrick
Oh, gotcha.
and we don't have any real rental equipment like that.
It's just different types of equipment, yeah.
The digger derrick's $6,200 a month.
Yeah.
We have our other truck,
Gotcha.
just getting rebuilt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, some of the smaller equipment items for rentals are similar between the two divisions, but that large one that's a game changer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the assets for water, water treatment plant, 22 million gallon a day capacity. We have 2 reservoirs with 3.5 billion gallon capacity. That's the Haskins and McGuire. We have 4 service reservoirs up on Fox Ridge. That's 22.7 million gallons of storage. And then we have 6,350 acres of watershed that's maintained. So pretty substantial assets there. We also have transmission pipeline, 22 miles. We have 161 miles of distribution pipe we maintain. We have approximately 12,500 water meters and approximately 1,000 fire hydrants that we maintain throughout our system. So the water division, some of the services and programs we have for that, we have sampling, we have system valving, we have hydrant flushing, surveying. Picture on the right there is emergency repair in the 16-inch water line transmission. We have backflow prevention program. We have a meter replacement program. We perform watershed tours, water treatment plant tours, and then we have safety and PPE. The picture on the right there is out on Michael Book. That was a 12-inch water main break we had. That was cast. That's our lead worker standing above that looking trying to figure out how we're gonna fix that problem there. The water main broke, but we also lost a pad mount transformer in that same situation there. That was a lot of work. Open up for questions.
Nope.
All right.
All right.
Well, thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jake.
I'm gonna hand it back over to Mark.
Okay. So we're going to talk about operating results now. So we've gone through our expenses. We'll talk about revenues, which will give us our results next year. So for the light division, our revenue classes are shown here. So we have our industrial and then all our distribution customer classes and the revenues across. So looking at our revenues, so we're projecting 46.9 million for this year, fiscal year 24-25. We had budgeted just over 46 million, so we're coming in about 643,000 better than what we budgeted. So that would be we did have a 2.75% rate increase that helped to drive that revenue increase. And again, we don't budget those increases. We just obviously they become part of our actual revenues if approved by the commission, but we don't put them in the budget. So that occurs. We'll typically have a bump from a rate increase if one happens. Then looking at the expenses, bring the expenses in, and for this year, we're estimating with our expenses that we would end up with an operating income of 312,000. You can see I've got the non-operating income below just as reference. We'll be estimating that this next month and bring that back in May as provide a kind of a complete budget picture for each of the divisions. But it is good to have perspective on both the operating revenues and non-operating income, because that does paint part of the picture of our operations as well. So the big story here is next year we have a budgeted loss of 1.7 million, which is driven by the BPA rate increase. So we have a cost of service that is underway now, and all of the information that you're seeing here as we continue to develop the budget, that goes and feeds into the cost of service, and the consultant will bring back to the commission a rate track recommendation for the next 3 years, consistent with the BPA contract running out through the end of this contract period. So we'll be working on that over the next month here to kind of finalize our estimates there. Any questions about the light division?
When will that rate consultant be in front of us?
July.
August.
Yeah, July, August.
Anything else you have?
Yeah, real quickly, so the non-operating income is basically timber.
Well, in the light division, it's contribution and aid to construction. So money that we receive for assets that we're going to construct. Basically, we get asked to do that and paid, and those assets become ours, but we're reimbursed for the construction of them. So that's part of it. And the other part of it is our interest revenue that we get from our cash reserves and interest on that. So this year we're probably like around 2 million in the light division for interest. The remainder mostly being contribution and aid.
And do the contribution and aid capital expenditures, the people that that the contractors or the developers put in, do they show up as expenses on the capital side, or
Mhm.
they do? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Anything else?
So the water division, same kind of view. We have our customer classes here and revenues across. So for the water division, we estimated we budgeted a $7.5 million revenue budget, and we are coming in better. Just under 8 million for our revenues. So that's an increase of about 416,000 is what we're estimating. We did have a 5% rate increase in the water division. And so that helped. Another thing that helped, contribute to that amount. Another piece of it, though, was our surplus water sales. That's water that is going to the city of Lafayette, and they are taking more water than we had budgeted. So there was an increase there as well. So then we look at our expenses, bring those in, and so for this year, we're estimating just about $8.2 million expenses, with bringing us to a $236,000 loss in the water division for operations. We did have a operating loss budgeted at 648,000, so we're better, about 411,000 than we budgeted, driven by the revenue increase. And then looking at next year, we've got a large loss, 816,000. We don't have any increase in this revenue number. The only increase we have here is a 0.5% growth increase, just like in system growth. So if there were to be a rate increase, that would help to offset some of this loss. We're looking at this, and we'll be continuing to look at that over the next month as we develop our draft budget further. But then it's interesting, again, if you look at the non-operating income, and particularly in the water division, when you compare that to the operating income, like it's very significant in the water division, and a big component of this is timber. But we also have the interest as well. Here, we're doing about $1.5 million in interest in the water division. So, just, I guess, kind of context for these losses is we do have high net income. So that factors in as well. So we'll bring that next month back. Any questions on the water division?
What else is in the non-operating? Because it said the timber averages around 2.8. We got 1.5 in interest.
Contributions.
Yeah, we do have
Capital.
contributions there too.
Don't we have also the 2 million for the?
Yeah, this year we did for the zone 2,
Yeah.
which
Or the pump
would
station.
be effectively contribution in 8 as well. But yeah, we isolated that separate. So, yeah.
On the surplus water sales, the 298 for the draft budget, is that just Lafayette only? And do we see them sustaining that 3x of what they were previous, and why is that?
Yes, and part of it is they're not taking water from the joint well field of Dayton anymore because of the loss of production in those wells. Production's gone down. So 5 wells are only producing about 200 gallons a minute now.
So they're on MAC water basically year round now?
They're on us, but they also have some of their own other sources besides the joint well field that they use. They have this, both Dayton and Lafayette have their own spring systems as well. But we'll be talking, and we'll talk later, because we're going to talk about, water and the potential for selling water to Dayton as well, which is not included in this.
Yeah. Good, thank you.
So Mark, I think we talked about using the surplus water sales to help with the Willamette source, right? So, but if it goes in here as operating income, we're kind of losing it, right? I mean, we're not, this budget doesn't take that into account, does it?
It wouldn't,
Is there a
We
way
would-
we can do that?
we would. I'd have to think about how we would. That water would be, I don't know that we could not classify it as operating revenue. We would maybe have to reserve it in a way that we could. To use it for a different purpose or
Are we
something.
doing anything now in our bookkeeping to keep track of that or keep it separate?
It's coming in as operating revenue. Yeah, so we're not.
I thought we had talked about doing that. Keeping it separate so that we could know that we were using it for that purpose.
We created a separate account, so we
Okay.
certainly we know what we've collected from the city.
Okay.
So we do have that.
So we keep track of it, but we then meld it in and forget about it, keeping a separate account when it comes time to set the rates, right?
Yeah, it's part of our operating revenues that helps to factor in the rates. Yeah, if we would have to. I'd have to think about how we would try to change the classification, because I don't know I'd have to maybe talk with Mark on that, our rate consultant, discuss that with him.
Yeah, I'm glad we're keeping a separate track of it, but it seems to me that if we continue this way, we'll end up just spending it on non-Willamette source purposes, right? Because, or not collecting that much money and when it was a tiny amount, that was one thing, but this
Yeah.
starting to get to be real money. If
Yeah.
we add data.
My thinking is we would probably need to create some kind of a reserve and track it that way.
And then the reserve, if it goes in a reserve, then it's not operating income.
Well, it would
Or
come in through
sales.
operations, but it would get separated out so that we could track it and spend that cash in a different, for capital or for some other
So-
purpose.
But how would that help us in the rate setting?
It would have to be a discussion with Mark to see how he may have to separate that out himself through the rate process.
Or maybe treat the reserve as an expense or something like
Yeah.
that, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I would really appreciate it if we don't drop the ball on this.
Okay.
And we're gonna have, next year we'll do another rate study, so
Okay, good.
this would be the time to do that.
Well, but
Make sure we
Let's-
get it separated.
yeah, but let's keep an eye on our bookkeeping system so we
Know what the dollars are.
know what they are, but don't have an unrealistic view of what our income is that's available to offset rate increases. Thank you.
So, and we're putting the money aside for it, and tell me what.
Well, what the commission had talked about before, which of course, the commission could change, was this money from the surplus water sales would be used we use it for developing the Willamette source, whether it's putting pipelines in, more permitting. I think there's still more permitting
Oh,
out
there's a
there.
lot of permitting to
The,
do.
those kind of things,
Okay.
because it seemed like a good use of that money.
Mhm.
And we had talked about it, but again, it's, if the commission chooses to do something else, that's.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, that sounds good. When did we start selling water to Lafayette?
2020.
Yeah.
It was pretty small back then.
Yeah.
It was around $30,000 a year, and so just in the last couple of years, it's grown.
And then we had a significant sale to Carlton when
Right.
they had to shut down to do their repairs too, right? Was that 200 or something thousand?
We collected about 400,000
Yeah.
from Carlton. It's
So
a couple
that was-
$100,000 a year.
So this is
2
added
years.
up to kind of real money.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So just to clarify, Tom, what I'm hearing is you're looking to have all this revenue set aside in like a reserve or like a capital.
Yeah,
fund that's
or
not
just,
touched except for.
or spend it because we're having expenses for the Willamette source
So-
now, right?
Yeah, so for example, we're looking at buying property for a treatment plant.
Yeah,
So would you use that to help offset that
Yeah.
cost?
Yeah.
And one idea, I think John had years ago when we were first talking about this, was that for the pipeline from the diversion point on the Willamette up to the new water treatment plant, we figure that out. It might make sense to have either an in-house group or person and equipment, or a contract with somebody where they just kind of gradually laid pipe every year rather than having one big contract. And that would be, keep somebody busy, that would be worthwhile, as in that way you would accomplish this. And I could see this money going for that too. So I don't think we should just lock that money up. I think we will, staff will find ways to spend it on this particular project, but then we don't end up just kicking the can down the way into the street until we end up having to put a whole bunch of money into this stuff.
Then, so once we get the property purchased, the next step was to start working on the intake. Because the permitting for that, I think, is like 4 years. And then we have a 2-year construction window once we get the permit. And then the intake can sit for years without having to utilize it, but at least we've got it built.
And or we can start laying that pipe.
Yeah,
and maybe
and that would be the next step
Yeah.
after that, is we start laying the pipe in. That's one of the things we're doing with the transmission main now, is we're looking at acquiring all the easements prior to us actually going out and laying the pipe, getting the new pipe installed. So we actually are working with Stantec right now to get those easements.
And we had also talked about the possibility of in the process, kind of keeping an eye on what we're doing here, and not have to have a huge increase at the end. So that's what kind of this is about.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like that.
You,
Yeah. So this is just kind of summary of what we've already discussed. In the light division, our revenues are up for next year from load increases. Jamie talked about that, as well as the BPA rate increase that gets passed through to our industrial customers. Since their expenses go up, so does the money we collect from them for that. And then, of course, the significant power supply increase. And we talked about the cost of service study that we're going to be doing to help us analyze that for rate setting. And then in our water division, our strong revenues this fiscal year, driven, we discussed Lafayette and our residential customers. We did have the rate increase in fiscal year 24-25. That's in the rate track again for next year, but it's not in the budget. Significant non-operating revenue, and then the potential of surplus water sales to the city of Dayton. So takeaway for us as we were going through this and preparing it is that we are gonna line by line go through our, each of our departments' budgets. We'll do that as a group and look at what we can do to refine things as we get our draft budget put together for May. So,
Good. Thank you so much.
yep. Thank you.
So real quickly, this was great. I commend you and the staff, having sat through lots of budget adoptions. This makes it so much easier on the commission to understand what's happening and ask intelligent questions. So I really appreciate everybody the way this worked out. And I wonder if Trina could send these slides out. I know they're not final, but it might help commissioners look at them to get ready for next meeting. Because you probably
Yes, I will
have that
place it
budget.
in call to order. The previous presentations are also there under your documents in call to order.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Mark.
That's useful. Trina's been having
We have the cloud. We have our own little water light cloud.
Yeah, we do. Oh, there she is. Okay. Next item is an intergovernmental agreement with ODOT. And I invite back Director James Burke to present.
All right, thank you. This is a simple one. I hopefully is doing business here, but
Okay.
ODOT's going to be performing some construction activities out there on Highway 99. We've entered into these agreements before. The scope of their work is going to be from out by Lowe's all the way past, I'm not on Highway 99 up through the high school there, the soccer fields up to their Les Schwab.
17.
We're gonna be doing some ADA ramp upgrades through there and some minor asphalt improvements. So part of that, they've identified some work that we'd like to include in their contract. It's approximately $3,600. And that's what we're looking for approval tonight on. Same as a resolution for that. If you have questions, I can answer them now.
Any questions?
And this is resolution number 2025-3, a resolution authorizing approving an ad work letter agreement between the Oregon Department of Transportation and the city of McMinnville acting through its Water and Light Commission to relocate utilities. It's 2025-3.
We need a motion.
That would be, yes, a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
Garvin, and do I have a second? Tinkersley? Any questions for Mr. Burke? Nope. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed?
Can I pull the commission, Mayor?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Mayor Morris,
Yes.
Commissioner Tinkersley,
Yes.
Commissioner Elmer,
Yes.
Commissioner Garvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Macy Baker.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was quick. Next item is a request for offer of post 2028 BPA power cells agreement. Jamie Phillips, there you are.
Here I am. Thank you. McMinnville Water and Light's current BPA power sales agreement expires September 30th, 2028. Throughout the last couple of years, BPA has worked closely with the region to develop the next power sales agreement to offer to its customers, also known as the Provider of Choice contract. As provided in the Northwest Power Act, customers have the right to request a Provider of Choice contract from BPA to meet their regional firm power load, and have between April 1st and June 18th to request the contract and to inform BPA of their product choice. The attached letter from BPA goes into further detail there. BPA has served the energy needs of McMinnville for decades by providing reliable, cost-effective power, and their BPA's load following product is best suited to McMinnville Water and Light because it provides the flexibility necessary to accommodate the fluctuations in electric demand. Staff recommends commission approval of a resolution authorizing the mayor to formally request power service from BPA through a Provider of Choice power sales agreement and select the load following product.
Any questions of Jamie? You want to read the resolution?
Yeah, this is resolution number 2025-4, a resolution by the city of McMinnville's Water and Light Commission authorizing approving a request for offer to sell electric power from the United States Department of Energy acting by and through the Bonneville Power Administration. That's resolution 2025-4.
Right, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Garvin, second, can I get a second?
Second.
Tinkersley. Any more discussion? Trina?
Yes, Mayor Morris,
Yes.
Commissioner Tinkersley,
Yes.
Commissioner Elmer,
Yes.
Commissioner Garvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Macy Baker.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Next item is an update to the customer service policy. I'd like to invite Customer Service Manager John Spence to present this agenda item.
Thank you. All right, in your reference material there, you'll find bringing back the customer service policies with some additional edits from last
meeting in March. I'd like to go over just those few additional edits. And then open up for some questions. Page 4, we just clarified using commissioner comments, a little bit more on the responsibility upon the death of a customer. Tried to tie it in more with what was required for service requirements for customer signing up for service. On page 10, we removed the edits that we had for section A13, just left that as it was prior to the edit. Page 19 and page 21, we updated the disconnect notice fee language to match. And then along with that, we added 2 additional terms into the definitions. One called a disconnect after date, the other for non-business days. Answer any questions if anybody has some.
I know, Commissioner. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
and I thought you took care of it, so thank you.
Great.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. Pam, can we read the resolution?
Yes, this is resolution number 2025-5, a resolution by the Water and Light Commission of the City of McMinnville making rules regarding customer service. That's resolution 2025-5.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Have a motion?
So moved.
Tankersley, do I have a second?
Second.
That was Lisa.
Got in there.
Hello. Trina, can you take a vote?
Yes, Mayor Morris,
Yes.
Commissioner Tankersley,
Yes.
Commissioner Elmer,
Yes.
Commissioner Garvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Macy Baker.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
A nice tan. You like a
Oh,
lot of
thank you.
color on your.
Get ready to go on vacation.
Okay. Next item is former attorney consent letter. Invite General Counsel Sam Justice to present.
Commissioners, so as we discussed last month, we reviewed a consent letter, which is a form of communication from your attorney, which is a confidential communication. We discussed that in executive session. It involves a request for consent from the commission's former attorney, Tyler Yeoman Millet, to represent an adverse party, in this case, the city of Carlton. Simultaneous with that, I'm also requesting, in the letter, I'm requesting permission from my former client, the city of Carlton, as I represented when I worked at the Hogberg Reuter law firm. Also in the same letter, requesting permission from them to represent the commission in an adverse manner to the city of Carlton. As you may recall, in the past, this consent has not been given, and both the city of Carlton and the Water and Light Commission have had outside counsel for any communication or negotiations back and forth on the sale of surplus water to the city of Carlton. So what's being requested here is approval of this joint letter. It's a discussion of the risks associated with such representation by a former attorney of the client. As I indicated, we did discuss this in executive session last month. The letter has been presented to you under password protection because it remains a confidential document. It's a communication from lawyers to clients. But it is in your packet for you to review, but not available to the general public. I've discussed this matter at length with Mr. Yeoman Millet, who is the city attorney for Carlton. This letter in the same form was presented to the city council of the city of Carlton on April 1st. It was approved in this form. So if the commission approves it, it'll be executed both by the mayor and the mayor. And we'll go on our records and giving that permission allow me to represent the commission with regards to the city of Carlton water matter, and also allow Mr. Yeoman Millet to represent the city of Carlton, representing the city of Carlton.
Okay.
So that's what I have, and I have motion language when you're ready for that.
Okay. I know we discussed this in executive session last time. Do we have any questions now? Concerns? No? All right, we're ready for your,
So this would be a motion to approve a joint letter to the city of Carlton and Water and Light consenting to former attorneys Tyler Yoa Millet and Samuel Justice, representation of parties adverse to former clients in relation to a water sale agreement between Water and Light and the city of Carlton, and authorizing the mayor and the clerk to sign.
you have a motion,
So moved.
Elmer? And then do I have a second?
Second.
Garvin? Any additional discussion?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with it. I think they took care of the concerns and I think it'd be better for both parties, but particularly better for us if Stan can help us on this.
I agree. Trina?
No need for the poll on this one.
Okay,
Go ahead.
perfect.
Off of the
Thank
vote.
you.
Yep.
Subject vote? Oh,
Yeah.
oh, okay. Confuse me, Trina. Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, thank you, Sam.
You're welcome.
Next item is regional water and potential surplus water sales to Dayton. John Dietz.
Yes, so what I did is I tried to put a memo together that kind of talked about the history of what's happened over the last, I guess, 17 years with water in the county and how McMinnville Water and Light has been involved. And then I put some next steps, potential next steps. So if you look at the map on I guess it's page 4 of the memo. Currently, water flows from Dayton to Lafayette, and that is through the 14-inch transmission main. That water is provided through the joint well field. That joint well field, the wells are failing in that well field. Currently, the maximum yield of the 5 wells is only 200 gallons a minute. So over this last summer, Lafayette and Dayton basically worked together. Lafayette took water from us and no water from the joint well field. And so basically what's happened now is Dayton has come to us and said, hey, look, the well field is not going to be able to produce what they need for their summertime demand. They were actually on water restrictions in January. And what they are looking to do is actually use the Lafayette pump station to transport water through the transmission line backward to what it has been in the past. And that basically would fill the reservoir in Dayton, and then they would consume water out of that. And that would be a temporary measure. Long-term, they would like to have a interconnect with McMinnville. So what I had laid out is some potential next steps for the commission to consider. And I would open it up for questions.
How much water is it going to take to fill up the reservoir?
Well, it's going to be on probably the maximum of the pump station is about 760 gallons per minute. Lafayette has 500 of that. So you figure 260 gallons is what they would have. So what they would probably do is continue to use the joint well field for Dayton only, plus supplement that with water from the pump station.
And John, to get water there at this 760 level, will that be requiring a bigger pipe than what Lafayette paid for? So do we need to get paid back for part of the upsizing?
So one of the things, yes, one of the things that we did is when we installed the 24-inch main, Lafayette paid for the 12-inch, essentially 12 inches of that pipe.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to remember it's a 24-inch pipe. That means it has 4 times the capacity of a 12-inch. So we essentially have 3 more 12-inch pipes in that line. And what we would look at is, in the long run, Lafayette, or excuse me, Dayton paying, McMinnville, I think, was around $700,000 as McMinnville paid for upsizing that pipe from the 12 that Lafayette required to the 24-inch. So I would envision that they would pay a third of that cost.
And how much could the 12-inch pipe deliver?
The 12-inch could probably deliver the whole 760
Okay.
easily.
Okay, so we don't have an immediate problem.
Right. No, we have not immediate
Because
problem.
Lafayette already paid for a pipe and to
Correct.
get that.
But
Okay.
in the long term,
they
we'd
need
want
to, yeah.
exactly. Because then what we would do is reserve that capacity
Right.
for dams. And so anyway, I've laid out some next steps. Those would include, we're gonna make sure we have capacity essentially at the end of our system. The COG is working on a grant right now. I've not heard if that's been awarded or if they're going to get the grant to study the structure of what a long-term structure would look like for a regional water. And we have an IGA right now with Lafayette, McMinnville, and Carlton, but how that would look in a bigger picture.
I see.
And then the vision I would have is that McMinnville would actually own the infrastructure and potentially sell water to the regional group, because it really doesn't make sense to have, and I've been down this road before and it didn't work well, is to have a bunch of people own a plant
Hmm.
that we're trying to maintain. And somebody says, no, we don't want to do that. And I was in that before in a previous utility, and there was a lot of resentment in that. So,
That works well.
no,
That's similar to what Wycombe does, but the county does the rating system.
yeah,
The
has,
county owns it and everybody pays their
yeah,
fees.
that to me makes much more sense. And then what they would do is they would buy capacity essentially.
Mhm.
And then that capacity would be reserved from that plant. Would be the way I would do that. And so these are the steps I've laid out, and I just wanted to make sure that the commission was comfortable with me moving forward with those steps. And if there's any feedback.
Yeah, I'd like to add a couple of things to the history was really good. So you just brought up the IGA and the initial organization, which I think was called WIRA.
Yes.
We had tension right then.
Mhm.
What happened was there were these water rights on the Willamette that were very, very cheap, but they were new water rights, and they looked like they would allow us to take quite a bit of water in the summer when you needed to at that time. So our staff discovered it, and we told these other cities, well, if you'd like to, why don't you tag along and we'll just, you'll pay, it was hundreds of dollars
Yeah.
they paid, right? But then we talked about, well, how are we gonna hold these things? And the other cities wanted, well, one city, one vote. But the commission decided that if it turned to operating something or anything other than owning these things, if we're gonna have most of the money into it, it would not do the ratepayers justice here for us to agree to that. So what happened was there was an agreement that the initial intergovernmental agreement, and I think it says this, was only for the purpose of holding those particular water rights. And if there were disputes, somebody could just leave and take their share of them with them, which Dayton did. Then what happened is we discovered that because of changes in the fish flows and changes in the weather, that you were not going to be able to use the first right.
And that's
Yeah.
what this chart is.
Okay, so
In the packet, the
Yeah.
last chart.
so it was cutting back how much you would use that water. It was they really weren't worth very much because you
Yeah.
couldn't use water when you needed it in the summertime.
So look at
So-
that one, 142
Yeah,
days in
days
2015.
Yeah.
that they couldn't use their water.
yeah. So we started looking around for other water rights, and we said to these other cities, well, do you want to participate? But this is going to cost, hundreds of thousands of dollars for your share.
Right.
And if you do, we need to negotiate a new agreement too. And they all said, no, we don't have the money. We're not interested. You go ahead. And so that's why we went ahead and we bought 2 water rights ultimately that are older that give us some benefit. We bought the diversion point land.
Mhm.
We paid for a whole bunch of engineering and
Mhm.
testing to determine that where the diversion point was going to be would be allowable to be a diversion point. And I think we got the diversion point moved, didn't we?
We did, we had it moved downstream
Yeah,
from
Which
IPs.
was a water resources deal that we paid a consultant to do for us. And, it wasn't easy, but it got done.
Right.
And that's why we're buying the potential treatment plant here. We're doing all of that because nobody else could afford or wanted to be part of it at that point. And at the points as it came up. So, and it just seemed like, as John said, it just seems like to try to then have people buy back in and then have a governance that was fair to our ratepayers doesn't make sense to me.
And those rights that we acquired, the additional rights were for 5 million gallons. That was a 1982 right. And then for 4.85 million gallons, and that's per day. And that was a 1954 right, which predates the fish persistence right. So that means that essentially we can run that even if there's not enough water for fish.
Oh, wow.
And that was a very good right.
Yeah. So that's what we've done, and the commission has, I believe, has always looked at decisions on this, the sale to Lafayette, our multiple attempts to negotiate something with Carlton. It is that if it isn't a good deal for both of us, if it isn't a win-win, we shouldn't do it. So it should be good for them and their ratepayers, and it should be good for our ratepayers, so.
So I just wanted to make sure the commission's
Yeah.
comfortable with me moving forward with those
I
steps. that I
definitely
outlined.
Adam?
You put in there 5 years, what's the off ramp to that? If we don't.
Basically, it terminates at 5 years unless, and so what the goal was is to give that time to figure out how to finance, if they need to finance an intertie. And Lafayette obviously doesn't want them on there forever as well. So that was why we came up with the estimated 5 years.
I see.
Because it's going to take us 2 to 3 years just to construct it, especially since we have to go along ODOT right away, which is always a challenge.
And one more thing, we've always been very careful to limit the quantity so that we don't, for a couple of reasons. One, it's for us to replace the quantity for our customers when the time comes is very expensive. And
Capacity.
second, we don't want to give the other cities, sort of a feeling that, well, they can grow as much as they want and as fast as they want, and then we'll supply the water, because that's not what we can do here. So, because of the difficulty of, we don't think we're going to be able to ever get another water source in the Coast Range. And the Willamette source is going to get harder to get residents. So we've been careful to say the quantity is limited, and we've also been careful on the Lafayette contract to say that the time was limited, because we want to switch them to the Willamette source when that's ready.
Yeah.
So that's what, and staff has done a really good job of sort of negotiating this, and where it hasn't been possible to have everybody feel like they're winning, we didn't do it. That's why we don't have a contract with Lafayette, with Carlson now. And hopefully we will, but if we're not, if both sides don't feel like they're better off, then I don't think we should do it.
Thank you. I'm good with the capacity line for.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Lisa, you're comfortable? Okay,
Is there going to be a time in the future where we will talk more about this?
Oh, yeah.
Larger, okay. I've got
Yeah,
there's a
there's
lot
a,
of thoughts on it.
yeah, there's a lot of steps that we're gonna be taking along the way. And so, that's one of the things that, once we're doing our due diligence on the property right now, and we're still doing that. And once we get that locked in, then it's start to focus on the intake site and getting permitted in the river and figuring out how we're gonna get that done next.
Yeah, I would put a priority to getting it functional. I mean, I could see
Well, I can see
any
more and
law,
more.
some law changing, and
That's
you
one
know,
of the concerns we have, yeah.
that we just pass some law that says you can't do, if we're already set up and executing,
Mhm.
I don't think they can take it away, right? I think it's just sitting unused.
Well, and that's why we want to, we have, the good thing is on our senior rights, we have 30 years to perfect those rights.
Okay.
So that means we have 30 years to, and so what we want to do is once we get the plan up and operational, we want to perfect those rights as soon as we can. And that means, if I remember right, is it 4 hour? I think it's a 4-hour flow. Is that, I'm trying to go back, but I think you have to run it for 4 hours at the max to get the right perfected.
And then, John, we'd also talked about investigating whether we could legally and consistent with the water right, sell to some farmers on the
Mhm.
way temporarily and protect it that way too.
Right. And then the other thing is,
Untreated water.
yeah, because it'll be untreated water, so
Yeah.
it'd be fine for farming.
Yeah.
There is also an intake on the site right now for our farmer, so having the potential to move that off, and then we supply the water directly through his right, from our intake from it to his right.
Or by his right.
Yeah, well, it's an irrigation right, so
Oh.
it's not, we want a municipal right. Irrigation is not very for us.
Interesting. All right.
Okay.
Do you have anything else?
One other item, Trina wanted me to, I did write it down, Trina. So we want to talk about the general manager's report and potential special meeting.
Oh.
You want to talk about that, Chad? Sure. Come on up. And explain what we're looking at.
Yeah, in my department report, I kind of outlined the CMGC process and where we're at. Things are moving well and things are moving fairly rapidly. We received 7 responsive proposals. We had an evaluation committee comprised of 5 water and light employees who have been diligently evaluating those proposals over the last week. And actually today we met and we scored and evaluated them. And so we still got to reach out with our consultant tomorrow. We're going to touch base, but we've kind of got a short list of a couple folks that we're looking at. We plan to do interviews with those CMGC firms. And then after that, we are going to have a highest ranked proposer that we would like to bring forward to the commission, authorizing staff to go into contract negotiations with the CMGC. And so that's what the special meeting's for, is to basically present the highest ranked proposer and ask for that permission.
When
we
would
have a
that be?
date?
What
Yeah.
time?
Yes, April 24th.
What time?
Whatever works for the commission.
Okay. I,
Preferably in the afternoon if there's availability with the commission, because in the morning we have Take Your Child to Work Day, so a number of staff here at the facility will be tied up with that.
I would have to be early in the afternoon. I have a dentist appointment and you have to you have to set the dentist appointment these days. Seems like years ahead. That's not quite right, but.
What time is that appointment, Tom?
So Adam said 3 p.m. and on wouldn't work, so early in the afternoon works sounds like for Adam
Yeah,
and on.
yes.
I'm open
I can
that,
do that.
yeah. I'm open that morning.
Lisa's
good too.
waving, yes, yeah,
So like 1 o'clock?
that'd be great.
Does that work?
Okay, and this will probably be just a Zoom only, so wherever you are, you can jump on. We'll deal with this one agenda item on and, only, and then you can
Yeah.
get on with the day, so.
Okay.
And projecting about how long?
30 minutes, Chad?
Great.
Yeah, it shouldn't, it depends on how many questions the commissions have, but yeah.
Go from the dental.
Could we possibly do 1:30? Would that be okay with everybody?
Works
Just so
for
people
me.
have time to get their kids back to school after the Take Your Child to Work Day? 1:30?
Yeah, that's fine.
1:30 to 2? Okay, well, 1:30 is what we'll
That's
do.
great. Thank you, everybody, for accommodating.
Yep, no worries.
And I will send out a calendar invite here in just a couple of days, get that on everybody's calendar.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Chad.
Okay. Now you have an actual report too, don't you?
I do, if there's any questions. I think one thing I would like to highlight is we've had a couple of significantly bad bills in the legislature right now. And so-
Not like those to pay, but.
I'm just highlighting the ones that there's been more than a couple, but for us, Senate Bill 1062 was one that was particularly bad for the commission because it basically moved the rate authority to the city council. And that was tied to an issue with some cities that have charter issues with essentially raising fees or taxes. So that one, I think after 6 amendments with the sponsor, I think we got that one taken care of. And then there was SB 916, which was another one. I don't know if everyone knows, but since we're a public entity, we do not pay into the unemployment insurance fund. We pay directly any claims. So if this bill, if we had, let's say our line worker group went on strike, that would mean we would have to pay for 12 employees when they're on strike
Oh my
directly. So that would be a significant bill to water and light. So that was another one. And then probably another one that's really bad, not just for us, but for any, was Senate Bill 26, I think it's actually House Bill 2688, which would have made prevailing wages for things even outside the state.
God. You could even determine. where they
Well,
came
and
from.
that's the whole point. I don't see how you could determine, and I actually put in Representative Elmer's press release on that one, because that was just a real, can you imagine, how are we gonna do prevailing wage for a power transformer maybe in Wisconsin or someplace in the country, or even
Or Malaysia,
overseas?
didn't we
Yeah.
go to Philippines once for a
Malaysia,
transformer?
you're right, it was Malaysia, so how do you do that?
And who's prevailing wages? The prevailing wages there or here?
Ours, I know, and that's,
Yeah.
it's just so, those are ones that, and there's many others, but some of them have died, thank goodness, but we still have a number that we're tracking, and so our rep, Jennifer Jolly, tracks all of that and has been keeping us up to date, so those were the three that I picked out that were particularly not great.
Great, thank you. And Jennifer found the water bill.
Yes.
Even though she's tracking
Electric.
stuff for electric. So
Yeah.
please tell her thank you
Yes.
from us.
And I don't know if the commission knows, there's actually 4 entities in the state like us. So McMinnville, Springfield, Canby, and Eugene Water and Electric Board are all similar structures, a little different because of our charters, but all have their own governing body that's separate from the city council.
Yeah, the other municipal utilities like Ashland and Forest Grove have, the city council runs the utility as well,
Yeah,
right?
both electric and water.
Yeah.
So.
Any other questions on John's report? No,
Okay.
it's a good report. Thank you.
Thank you, John. These are
Yeah.
helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions at all from the commission? Or anything? Nope. All right, so let's go to the financial information. And if there's any questions there. I didn't have any, I looked through it.
I saw one.
Hearing none? No? Lisa? Okay. All right. So we will now be going into executive session. There is no further action to be taken by the commission this evening, so we will not be returning to the open session. Thank you for coming.
So we'll be entering executive session pursuant to RS 192-660 sub 2 sub F to consider information or records are exempt from public disclosure under RS 192-345-23 revealing security measures to protect individuals, buildings, property, and information processing, and RS 192-660 sub 2 sub P to consider matters related to cybersecurity, infrastructure, and responses to cybersecurity threats. On our agenda, there's also a reference to a second executive session, which we will not be having this evening relating to 192-660 sub 2 sub F relating to attorney-client communications as it's not needed. We will not be coming back into open session. There will be no decisions made in the executive session. If we have media joining us this evening, they're instructed not to share anything out of or subject to the executive session exemption. With that, we can move into executive session and we will adjourn in the executive session.